Okay, this will be my sequence for Prod Paladin. I'll be having 3 sequences, one for, actually 2 kind of for Mythic Plus and sort of open world, and one for single target meant for either raid or single target boss fights. The single targets will be Templar spec, just because it'll give the most DPS out of LightSmith. All 3 sequences will have one version. Normally my sequences have 2 versions. The first version would usually be with no modifiers and just press the button and it does everything you need to do, even all your cooldowns, minus your defensives, of course. Your defensives you'll use manually. However, with a prod paladin, it's kind of expected you'll eventually start off healing people, throwing freedoms, throwing blessings. So it's only one version. It can completely work without any issue, without using any modifiers. It'll do its damage. It'll keep you alive. However, it does have modifiers in it if you want to use them and get used to them. You have even a battle res modifier. Holding Alt over a dead person will rather better in combat. Holding Alt over an ally while alive will cast Word of Glory, including yourself. Holding Shift, Freedom. Holding Alt and Shift together, Blessing and Protection. Control, Spell Warding, and Control Alt Sacrifice. So, if you want to get more used to the sequence, you can get used to those. Again, all 3 sequences use the same. Just some tidbit of knowledge. If you're using the same keybind for multiple sequences, that's fine, as long as you specify the talent loadout with the sequence. So in this case, I have the talent loadout ST space Templar, and it will be the single target raid one basically that we're testing here. So if I go to my keybinds, I can see, where is it here? So ST underscore Templar, there's the talent. The top one in blue is your talent loadout, and this is the sequence name. So I have the keybind set here to the sequence here, and this is my talent loadout. If you switch, while you have every sequence keybind to the same keybind, I'm not sure if it's an automatic thing or it's not working for me, but you have to reload UI whenever you change talents. Because whenever you reload, that's when GSE does an API call to recognize your talents have changed. So then it looks for the sequence that matches to your current talent loadout, if you have any. So now that I reloaded, it should use this talent set with this sequence based on my key bindings here. ST Templar with Prot ST Templar. Okay. I've tried a few different MS values, but the one that works best with the single target Templar is 250. I'm sure there's other variations if people have tested them out, but right now the problem is with Templar, you have your Eye of Tyr that becomes your Hammer of Light. So if I put, because we're spamming Shield of the Righteous, I change it back. But because we're spamming Shield of the Righteous, it uses up your holy powers. So if you're just having it spammed, you can't really do that constantly, or else you won't be able to Hammer of Light, obviously, because you have the holy power and you're not controlling your sequences. So right now I only have it once in this whole sequence at 250 MS. If I use 250 MS, but I put in another Shield of Righteousness, say anywhere, it could be at the very bottom. But even doing that will make it so I can never do Hammer of Light, because the moment I get 3 Holy Power, even before I see my weak aura show it, it's already gone. That's how quickly it casts it. So I have to put 1. If I go lower than 250 MS, it will then also do pretty much the same thing. If I go 200 MS, it'll start casting Shield of Righteousness much too quickly. Because the lower you go, the more presses per second. So, and because it's off GCD, it casts it way before GCD comes up, unless you're extremely lucky when GCD comes up and you have it's here off cooldown. So 250 MS works the best with Prot ST Templar. In order to make it so it works the best, I had to put the Eye of Tyr on a loop of 2. What that means is when it gets down to here, it casts this, And before it goes all the way back up here, it goes through this same block again because it repeats twice. And it says, oh, now I can cast my Hammer of Light. And you're saying, okay, well, if you have 150 ms or whatever, that should be fine then. No. The problem is you're doing so many presses a second that you've pressed once here, and now you've done 7 presses. So it's already gone back up here, gone back down here. Oh, and it realizes your Hammer of Light is still within its GCD because it's already done like 6 presses in a second. So then it goes all the way down here, and you're having trouble, or actually you would go back up here and immediately use your 3 holy power you've gotten from Eye of Tyr. So 250 ms is the best I've tested with this. Feel free to do your own testing if you want to see what works best. But it's not the same for all 3 sequences. Some sequences work better with lower mass. So for now, we'll be testing ST Templar. Okay, we've already reloaded UI. Okay, we're at 250. So here we go. You see, even there was pretty close. So I got lucky a bit. It seems to be casting Shield of Righteousness quite a bit. We'll go for about 2 minutes on each test. I'm about to get a free Hammer of Light here too. There's 1, boom, 2. Okay, not bad. And I'll give you a little like showing of what it looks like at lower MS. So we ended about 207-ish. That's about right. I'll double check. And that was actually lucky because I put it in the wrong spot. This should have been actually up here for a much more guaranteed Hammer of Light. So right there you saw was actually quite lucky that I didn't miss any. But with this in this spot, there should be no choice. You should always 100% match them. But let me show you an example as well of using too high of MS and what can happen. So even if you do this manually, just by spamming the button on your keyboard or mouse, which you can do, it's pretty easy to get around, I don't know, 0.6 ms, even just by manually doing it. Maybe not for a long period of time, but you could easily have the same issue even just manually using it. So now I'm going to go to 150 ms, and we'll go again. And we missed it. It's going too quickly to the top, and because Shield of Righteousness is off GCD, if you get, the only way you'll get Hammer of Light there, even it didn't even do Eye of Tyr there, I think, is if you're lucky. So 250 MS has been the best test for me for Prot single target Templar. Okay, now I'll go back to 250 after that. Now I'll be showing you the open world Templar. This is basically, as it says, it's still single target kind of, but mostly cleave. So this you can actually run a Mythic Plus, but it's mostly for open world. The reason I say open world is just because it's mainly DPS spec. You're not going to Sentinel, so you have less survivability. And I have Crusader or stuff just if you're doing like world content. But other than that, it's still just, it's fine for Mythic Plus. And again, since all I use the same keybinds, I have to reload UI. So GSE now knows I am using the open world sequence. Okay, and with the power of magic, here we are. Okay, towns have been reloaded, I've reloaded UI, and now we should be using single target cleave. And we're going to be testing this one first at 250 MS. Yeah, we'll go to 2 minutes. This is probably the more stable one, and I do recommend using the 250 MS sequences. You'll notice that sometimes it's usually letting the shield righteous go down. Even as if I manually use it, it can sometimes be tough to keep up shield righteousness without any of your cooldowns running. There's a 317, I think. Not bad. Hammer Light's doing good. And this can still sometimes miss. This sequence isn't built the same as my single target, so there's no guarantee that every time the Hammer Light will get triggered, unfortunately. Now, let's go ahead. We use the same sequence, but we're going to go to 150 MS. Again, I recommend playing at 250, but I'm just giving you options and showing how each one can operate at different values. I've only tested 150 because I'm not wanting to go any lower, but feel free to go lower if you wish. But as well mentioned, the lower you go, the harder it becomes to hit your Hammer Light, which with Templar, that's sort of the reason you're going Templar is for Hammer the Light. So. Okay, we didn't have to change talents, same talent set, just different MS speeds. So here we go, testing open world Templar at 150 MS. cast it. Let's hope it casts it. Okay, missed it. Yeah, there's no guarantee. Plus, it's running at a much higher MS. Basically, more clicks per second. It gets harder and harder to hit it. Overall, though, it's doing better in a rotation. Even though it missed Hammer of Light, its rotation is better, obviously. Even though it's not really a rotation, because you're pressing at 150 MS, I think you're doing, what, 6 or 7 presses a second? So I wouldn't really call that a rotation, you're just sort of spamming buttons. But it definitely seems to work better. And it gets Shield of the Righteous off much quicker. And again, as I think I mentioned this in the single target Templar, if not, I can't add any more Shield of the Righteousness into the sequence. If I do, no matter the speed, they just become default using the Holy Power. Like nothing can be used when I have 2 Shield of the Righteousnesses in the sequences, unless I put them into a cast sequence, which then it's something that Prophecy could do down the line. So we got it there. That's good. You can see the big difference since we're just pressing buttons a lot more because we're at a higher MS. That's why it's I haven't dropped any of the Shield of Righteousnesses yet. But we missed 1 Hammer of the Light, so we'll have to make note of that. So that was 150 MS. I think that was higher. Let me double check. So that was about 340. Yeah, so that was much higher. If we compare to this one here, that was Hammer of the Light. So this was 286. This is at 250 MS. And this is at 150 MS. So Empyrean Hammer, Judgment Hammer Light. You can see I'm casting Judgment more because I'm pressing more buttons. So if you really want this sequence to shine, the open world, maybe you want to run 150 MS, but I'll leave that up to your choice. I'll still stick with 250. Maybe here and there if I want to see it pop off because it looks really cool when things just keep rolling. But for now, I'll be using 250. I'll make a note in the version that the best version would be 150. For now, we will go on to... Oh, and as I mentioned, in case I glazed over there, I say 150 MS. That can be done manual too. Like you can spam that button really hard. You'll hurt your fingers after some time, but you can reach that speed for a shorter period of time. So you could easily do that same rotation manually, but your fingers will start to go, and the older you get, the rougher those fingers feel. All right, so I can't even. We know it's first time. I can't remember if I reload or not. Let's reload now just to be sure. Okay, so swap sequences, swap talents. Now GSE will recognize I'm using Mythic LightSmith talent loadout. And that should do Prot AOE LightSmith sequence. Yep, okay. And this one we are testing at 250 MS first. Okay. And you can see here it's Mythic Plus, so it's using Sentinel this time, so the DPS shouldn't be as high. Here we go. As we get more haste, as the expansions go on, I believe it'll be easier to keep up Shield of Righteousness. Plus, I'm sure they're going to buff Prop Paladin at some point. It's just very hard to keep up your defenses without any cooldowns. Which other tanks, it's just easier. That's why it's not chosen spec right now, or chosen class. Still good. It does really good damage. Yeah, but as you can see, it uses both your weapons. Has no issue, or doesn't get stuck at using either of the weapons. So we're at 307. $309. Okay, so that was 309 before it finished. Here, so this was the 150 MS Open World Cleave. So at 309, so they're pretty close. This was 309, this was 309, but this is just damage too. You gotta think this one with all your the help you'll give out with your teammates with Sacred Weapon and the shield. This is still I recommend for Mythic Plus. Damage isn't really that thing something you look at for a tank. But that was 150 MS Open World Cleave. And this was 250 MS at 286. 309 is what that ended at. So you can see that damage-wise, the Cleave option for Imperial Hammer and also the Mythic Plus LightSmith build still both do good damage. The more mobs, though, I think LightSmith would start to pull ahead once there's more mobs. But alright, now the next test, final test, would be to do LightSmith at 150 MS. Alright, in we go. You can see, even at 150 MS, it's having trouble keeping up my my defenses. It's barely up sometimes, so it's rough. I think Bear can keep up Iron for a pretty good, much longer time. So, well. Nope, my buff fell off, so my DPS will be a bit lower, but that's okay. It's mostly showing off the sequence. So you can see between the 150 and 250, it's not too different on the Mythic Plus LightSmith. The only difference was the Cleave build. So again, I still recommend 250 MS. That's 4 presses a second. That's more than enough. That's to have to assist you in your rotation. And this week, what you're seeing up here is from the GSE United. It shows you what's actually being cast as it's going through. If you run it and you see this, that usually means a problem. But I'm not pressing anything. That's why it's showing it right now. I use it to help me troubleshoot sometimes. Okay. So hopefully these two sequences, or these 3 sequences, I guess, do good for everyone. I'm a really big fan of Templar. I don't really like it Mythic Plus, it just feels bad in general, but I like it for open world content and rares and stuff like that, just because of the damage of it. So I'll probably be playing that in the open world. And in Mythic Plus, I'll be going into the LightSmith build. If you're wondering when I reference MS, it's milliseconds. What I mean by that is people will use software from their keyboards or their mice or mouses or to assist them in the rotation. You can do it through a toggle or through a hold down. So if you press if you configure it on your mouse or your keyboard to toggle, so you press it once and then it goes through your rotation, and it does your rotation while you move around. This way you don't have to focus so hard in your rotation while trying to dodge mechanics on a boss. It's great for raiding. And the other one is you hold down the button, which is what I recommend. So this way you actively have to hold the button, whatever you configure it for, to do your sequence, and you move around. So you have one basically occupied finger on whatever button it is you have to hold, and the rest are going onto the your movements around the boss. So similar to the toggle, it's much easier to help you with getting through mechanics that way. And if you have any sort of issues, I mean, that's why GSE is here. People get old, they lose some ability, they still love the game, they want to play it. There's tons of comments of people saying they couldn't play if it wasn't for GSE, or they started with GSE and then they eventually got better at the game, they enjoyed it more, and then they started using it. They actually moved on from GSE. There's cases of that too. So sorry for the long video. Hopefully this works out great for everybody. You can find me on GSE United Discord or just update the lazy macro thread. Thank you.